Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to speak this afternoon. It is afternoon here, so good morning if it's morning for you, or good evening if it's evening from wherever you are. I'm going to present some research design notes along with some findings from quite an extensive literature review that we conducted as a project, which we're now only just starting to embark on the data collection aspect. Our research activity, which is a small research activity, is funded by the Social Systems Program of the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, or ACIAR, and the CSIRO, and it's in collaboration with a host of research partners who are online from both Laos and Vietnam, including VNUA, PPRI and NIM in Vietnam, and NAFRI in Nuol in Laos. While we're now only just starting to embark on the data collection, we've spent considerable time, close to 9 or 10 months now, carefully designing our research approach and the lens from which we're studying agrichemical use. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. The project is also supported by reference groups in each country, which provide feedback on case study design and also enable a forum for government, research and the private sector to be informed of findings. I'll be presenting the talk today, but as Alison mentioned, I have my team online ready to answer all your questions. So thank you to my team for being there to support me today. So the project is focused on understanding the multiple and interrelated drivers of agrichemical use, of which Alison mentioned some of those in her introductory presentation. And we're looking at use, access and disposal, and in particular how these drivers and practices influence one another. Both the Lao and Vietnamese governments are committed to reducing harmful use of agrichemicals and transitioning in some aspects to greener agriculture. However, there remain challenges for extension, particularly in governing safe use, including remoteness, for example, or resourcing, market dynamics, including information chains, as you all know, play a significant role in determining farmer options for use, and they can undermine government goals. Sociocultural beliefs and norms also influence risk taking. So these factors won't be new to many of you on the call. But with our project, we're trying to work from a social systems lens. And in many ways, we're needing to step back from the position where the challenge remains with the need to inform or educate farmers about the dangers of use, to a position where we're acknowledging that farmer education may have a role in safer use, but without attention to the broader dynamics of use, practice change will not occur. So we're very much building on the blocks of many others, including Rika Flor and Annie Shattuck, who've informed our research approach. And we're using a case study method to structure the research. So we've spent considerable time in finding the right research approach, including constructing a systems framework, which is informed by a social science lens. So a very human-focused perspective using qualitative research approaches. So one of the first tasks that we completed was a literature review, and it came in two parts. For the first part, across both countries, we set out to identify current policies, regulations and institutions relevant to use, and existing information on patterns of use, including extent and practices, and how drivers determine agrichemical use. The second part of the review was focused on identifying existing systems-based frameworks for conceptualizing agrichemical use in the region that we are working. But I'll only speak on the first part of that literature review today because I think it's of most interest to those on the call. So it is very clear that in our region, in Laos and Vietnam, there are laws, policies and extension programs in both countries that have a real focus on reducing agrichemical use. This is visible through recent consolidation of existing laws and regulations in Vietnam, for example, and an emphasis on green agriculture as a national goal in Laos. But despite the existence of these regulations and an emphasis on extension, the governance of use, especially pesticides at the local level, is relatively weak. There are informal and illegal channels of product movement and information flow, that are present in both countries, and the mechanisms for container disposal, for example, can be haphazard. There are obviously a number of social and economic transitions at play, particularly around household practices, and there are external wider transitions that also affect use, including agricultural intensification, increased commercialisation, and climate change. There are social transitions such as rural outmigration and increasing engagement in non-farm livelihoods that are also impacting on the way that we use, or the way that farmers use. Some of the market drivers also influence use, as many on the call would already be very familiar with. Product appearance and quality can influence use, and this may vary depending on the production system, of course, and market demand. We are seeing the higher production demands in some instances have led to increased use, especially in upland areas. There is some evidence of emerging markets for safer products, for product traceability and controlled use of chemicals. But one of the most interesting and probably challenging points to emerge from our review is that users of agrochemicals are often viewed as having primary responsibility for effective and safe use, and often carry the burden of exposure risk. And this is despite evidence of product formulation, labelling and retail availability sometimes being inconsistent with existing expectations, standards and laws. There's quite a bit of literature on personal protective equipment, PPE, which is identified as important for risk reduction, although much of the research that we came across spoke of equipment being substandard or advice not being consistently followed, or not aligned to farmer comfort or farmer risk beliefs. Raincoats, as pictured here, are a common choice for PPE, particularly in Vietnam. A consideration that emerges across the broader literature is that users are often aware of risks, but these risks and options are not evaluated in isolation. So rather, they're considered against a much larger range of values, risks, and needs that shape individual use. This is our rather complicated systems framework I'm going to present for you today. And I hope it conveys that diverse outcomes and impacts of agrochemical use are distributed unevenly across stakeholders and often change over time and is very dynamic. I've tried to animate the framework, so hopefully it does work. It's developed from the results of our literature review, and it takes a systems perspective and hopefully captures many of the actors in the system and the formal and informal institutions that influence use. So at the local scale, particular actors might be most prominent, and for our project, the farming household is the focal point. There are a number of interactions and relationships that farming households have with providers of product and providers of information. And households are also influenced by changing environmental, economic and political drivers. At the outer scales, there are influences of use also, for example, research agendas, government regulations, incentives, the private sector, all with their own priorities and agendas. And so even, I must say that this is a simplified version of our map. It might give you a headache to see the more complex version, but it's very much a work in progress. And what we're trying to do here is make sure we actually include in our framing of the system all of the various dynamics, uncertainties, relationships and interactions that occur and influence agrochemical use in the system. A number of factors have influenced where our selection of case study sites have occurred, and we've been very careful to include a mix of farming activities, including those that are known to using agrochemicals, a mix of geographic characteristics, upland, lowland, rural and urban, as well as socio-economic considerations to explore differences among ethnic groups, farming roles, commercial or subsistence crops. We're interested in obtaining a snapshot of agrochemical categories and, as mentioned earlier, other actors who interact with farmers and who have been identified as important research participants in the study across supply chain, regulatory environment and private sector. And that includes, of course, NGO and extension. A case study approach, we think, should be able to shed some light on these dynamics and interactions. In thinking about our case study design, the pandemic has meant that we've had to shift in considering how we conduct the research remotely, which has meant exploring digital methods of data collection, for example. Our research frame for each case study is designed to capture 4 key categories of information: extent of use, drivers of use, perceptions and beliefs, and information flow. We've decided to trial using some novel methods like photo voice for capturing data from agrochemical users, where farmers are potentially more encouraged, I think, perhaps to share photographs of their use and practice. And the research discussion then is focused on farmer storytelling and the sharing of perspectives and knowledge and beliefs. And the researcher becomes a more passive participant in the research process. Telephone and qualitative interviews are to be used for other actor groups. We have yet to see, we've piloted the photo voice methods, but we have yet to see how it plays out on the broader scale. So we're hoping to be able to share some results with you early in the year. And finally, thinking through some of the ethical considerations that are related to research design has led us to think and consider more deeply some of the potential risks that we need to manage during data collection and reporting of data. COVID is the most obvious one, the risks to researchers and communities. The spread of COVID has been spiking in both countries and healthcare systems globally are under pressure. So while vaccination is an important risk mitigation measure, we all know that it's not 100% effective in controlling infection or spread. So what we did not want to do is expose the research team or our research participants to the risk of field work. And we definitely didn't want to risk accidentally bringing COVID into communities. The other risk that we've taken some time to discuss is collecting information about agrochemical use. And that risk relates to participants sharing illegal or unsafe practice information that might not be in line with local recommendations. We think these risks are present for participants, perhaps mostly farmers, at the risk of being fined or otherwise punished based on the information they provide us, as well as to local officials. And the risk there we think might be shaming or punishment for those in the area of responsibility for not following certain guidelines. So we have selected sites, we've got a detailed research protocol, we have got a great team online, and we've started to pilot the methods. So we're now starting to make research connections in field, on site. It's been quite a journey to get to this point, but I think we've got a really good, strong, solid research design base, and hopefully by March and April next year, we'll have some results to share more widely. Thank you to all my team, long list here, which I'm very lucky to have a part of this project. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now.
Excellent. Thank you, Lucy. Brilliant presentation, and it's great to have your team with you. I think I've seen some people here. I'm just going to allow them to talk if they would like to. They're popping up on the screen, so that's good. Look, lots of really interesting information there. And I guess a couple of questions for you. I mean, you talked about the system and the different sort of, I guess, burden of responsibility and power across the whole system. How can you shift, and some uneven power there across stakeholders, how do you think you can shift the burden of responsibility a little bit more evenly across those stakeholders?
That's a great question. I don't want to do all the talking in this session, so I'll let my team try and answer that if they feel comfortable answering that question. I think for our small project, the best that we can do is inform others of some of the drivers and some of the power dynamics as sensitively as we possibly can, because it is a challenging topic. I'm not sure it is possible for one actor or one sector to actually shift power. I think there are cultural shifts that need to happen, but I think it's very much dependent on time and very much also dependent on shared responsibility for change. But I will shush now and let my colleagues talk. Thank you, Alison.
Which I'm just wondering, who would you like to nominate one of your colleagues here, Lucy? I've got some other questions as well too. So
yeah, sure, thank you. But perhaps Na or Liam, if you're happy to respond.
Hi, I'm sorry, my connection was poor, so I could not hear the question. Could you please repeat?
Yeah, hi Na. It was really just around how can you more evenly, I guess, shift power so that people have a more shared burden of responsibility, rather than putting all the burden of responsibility on farmers largely. Can we shift that burden around so that people share the load, I guess, or the burden?
Yeah, thanks. I think we used to use the value chain approach in studying, and not only the responsibility of the farmer, but all the actors in the chain and all the supporter, meaning that when farmer try to adopt like a good agriculture practice for vegetable and rice production, but if the other market actor cannot bring the product to the consumer who willing to pay for that, so the farmer will not have incentive to produce the good quality products. And also we also need the intervention from the government, who would control the quality of the product from market, from production area to the market. So it's not only the farmer, but it's the responsibility of all the actors and the supporter of the product value chain.
Yep, excellent, great answer. Another question here, and now you or Liam, you may be able to answer this. How easy is it to reach farmers, and how receptive are they to talking about their pesticide use? Liam, are you talking to farmers directly, or? Or maybe Lucy, have you found, what's your feedback on that?
So we've just begun in the field. So I'd probably let Na answer that question.
Okay.
Oh, and I can see Liam is just unmuted. He may have a connection problem, but we've got two possible respondents now.
Excellent.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, because we just celebrate 29 years of Vietnamese women. So I would like to give this chance for some lady from Vietnam side to say. But you know that PPI are working with the farmer very frequently, because we have a lot of different kind of research work and extension activity. So actually PPI staff can meet and talk to farmer very often, and we usually contact by face-to-face meeting. Now due to the COVID, so maybe the way to interact with farmer may be changed, but we have relationship with local people, including extension staff from local and leader from local people, so it's easy for us to contact and have an exchange information with the farmer. But I prefer to work with them directly by face-to-face through the daily activity.
Excellent. So that face-to-face contact is obviously really important. There's a couple of questions here. Maybe Lucy, this might be a question for you. And it was a little bit around what the photo voice technology, I think, was. What were you meaning by that? And what were the challenges you needed to resolve? Or you may still be in the process, I think, of resolving them. I'm not sure, but could you just describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alison. So it's a method that I haven't used personally, but my colleagues have used very much in the Indigenous research space. And the focus really is on changing the research dynamic where the research participant, so in this case the farmer, is able to share their perspectives and beliefs using photos that they have taken. So in our case, we are asking farmers to take a photo over a period of time, so 2 weeks. Take, for example, I know this is just an example, 5 photos that might describe something that you like about agrochemical use or something that is beneficial to you. 5 photos or 10 photos that you find challenging or dislike about agrochemical use, and then choose 2 out of that number. And the researcher then has a discussion about those 2 photographs. And the discussion, so there are of course guiding questions, it's not an interview. There are 4 focal guiding questions that we have chosen in our methodology. And they're more open-ended invitations to tell the researcher the story that the photo brings. So it's very much a challenge, I think, in that we're not absolutely certain that it's going to generate exactly the information we need. It's going to take some time for us to practice and see if it works quite well, but we're very keen to try and practice using this because we think it's going to work better remotely, but we also think it shifts the power a bit. It's less of an interview. It's more of a tell us your story and some of the challenges or some of the, the benefits that you have. So it's, I think in that sense it shifts power a bit, but we've yet to trial it, so we can definitely tell you how it goes.
Great. And I've got one more question for you, Lucy, and this is going to be a question for Delissa as well when we get to CropLife Asia, but it was a question really around the responsibility of pesticide applications. We were talking about how a lot of that burden is on pesticide users, the farmers. Is there any, I was thinking of disposal too of pesticide containers, but is there any discussion or work that's out there, and there may be, I don't know, around extended producer responsibility or responsibility for the manufacturers to actually make sure these things are looked at?
So we did dive into that literature. Our literature focused on looking at farmer use and farmer practice. I am certain there'd be literature out there on that topic. So I think probably that might be, a next phase in terms of just thinking about opening up that discussion about shared responsibility. At the moment, we really needed to be quite focused on our scope. It is a small research activity and it's very short in timeline, but I'd be surprised if there wasn't literature on that topic out there.
Okay, and Delissa may be able to share something with us later. There's another question in there for you, Lucy, to maybe answer in writing or one of your group around gender. But I think what we'll do now is move on to our next speaker. I'd like to thank you and your team for joining us. It's great to see all 3 of you with us, and I'm sure there may even be some more actually hidden in the audience there that I haven't managed to locate. But thank you very much, and good luck in your research.
Thanks.